Okay, we're going to get started with tonight's program. My name is Mary Jetton, and I'm with Evolve Law, and we're excited to be here. Thank you to our sponsors, Box, for hosting us and the lovely food back there, and thank you to Monica Zent of many, she wears many hats, but one of them is Zent Law, and the other is our sponsor, Foxworthy. So just a couple of housekeeping things. We're going to have, tonight's program is a Darwin talk, which is a short 5-minute talk, and then we're going to have our panel, and then after that we're going to have a closing Darwin talk. So please stay rooted in your seats for all of the content, and then we're going to have networking afterwards, and please go and visit the cool companies that are here from Evolve Law. So what is Evolve Law? We've done over 50 events now, and we have our own exciting news. In August, we joined forces with Above the Law, so our members will eventually be on a platform that reaches 1.3 eyeball, 1.3, yes, 1 1/3 persons, 1.3 million eyeballs. So it's very exciting. There's going to be lots of new opportunities, and Above the Law is very focused on creating this innovation center and this platform where the companies can interact with potential strategic partners, investors, and of course your customers who are attorneys. So I'm not going to talk much more about Evolve Law. If you're interested, come find me afterwards. I'd like to start off the program by bringing up Tina Fan from Simple Legal, and I am going to pull up your slides.
Good evening, everyone. Everybody can hear me okay? Trying not to block the slides. I'll make this fast. So this is a short agenda. I know I only have 5 minutes, but I want to try to make it worthwhile, so I'm going to talk a little bit on the faster side. I also am from New York, so quick introduction about myself. I'm the head of customer experience here at Simple Legal. Why am I speaking about implementation? Just a little bit background on myself. I have been doing this for close to 20 years. I have worked on every aspect of an implementation, and here's a sampling of some of the things that I've implemented. So lots of different applications. I do work for Simple Legal, but I've implemented lots of different technologies. So a quick introduction. Implementation isn't something new. It's been around for a long time. People have been implementing different things, and there's a ton of methodologies out there. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel. So there are things that you can certainly leverage, but there are a lot of tools that you can get out there. So in the next 5 minutes, there are 3 key things that I want to leave you with, and I want to think of this as sort of the greatest hits. So first is, asking why, plan and design, as well as manage the change. So a couple of things. Have you asked yourself, I'm just going to bring these up in the interest of time, what are your company's strategic goals, and do your goals align with them? A lot of times I think people are so focused on what they're doing, they have to pull themselves back to think about, does my department or my group, do these align with what my company is trying to do? What do your company expect from your group, what you're doing and your function? As well as, do you know your company values, and how are your relationships with your customers, whether that's internal or external, as well as with your vendor partners? I think asking the question why and why you're doing something is very important. It ties into implementation. So understanding the purpose behind everything you do and whatever you're trying to change and implement, I think people oftentimes don't take that step back and understand the reasons behind things. And it's really important to use it as an evaluator for your decision-making process when you're implementing technology. Every single requirement and process should be viewed through that lens. Why are you doing it? Does it help improve something? Does it align with your goals? If not, is it just because you were doing it before? It also helps you understand, if you understand the why, you can use that as a tool to motivate others to change. And it makes you design better processes. So planning, it definitely pays to plan ahead. I think that all too often, people want to do things quick. Let's get this done quickly. Let's implement this quickly. And they don't want to plan, but really that's a failure. If you don't spend the time to plan, it ends up costing you a lot more time. So a couple of reasons to plan. people, functions, and process. So you have to think through what are the different peoples involved, what are the different groups involved. Oftentimes when you're doing an implementation, it involves cross-functional teams, and if you don't plan ahead and think about the resources involved, you're not going to get their time, you're not going to get their buy-in, so it's really important to think about that ahead of time. Also, when you plan out the steps, it helps you not make mistakes, not miss things that you should have done, and you just take the time to write out all those things that need to occur. It also helps you think through the sequencing of things. And then lastly, when you plan ahead and you plan something out, you can also set accurate expectations. How long will it actually take? When will something happen? It's important for the different resources involved to know, hey, in June, you expect me to do something, and if they don't know that ahead of time, they can't plan for that either. And then it allows you to set it up for success. Design. So this is a big thing. I think that, technology, automation, all of those words, a lot of times people use that and they don't do it well. So if you automate a bad process or a bad design, then it just makes that even more. You make it faster, you're doing the same thing worse. So it's really important to think through what your process is, what are you designing, and then automate that, because that's what's going to create a successful implementation. So I talked about this earlier. Every single step of requirements and design, you want to ask the question why. You don't want to keep something in place just because that's the way it was done before. And then the other big thing is bridging the gap between business and technology. So I know this sounds like a simple thing to do, but a lot of times when you have an IT department and a business function, they don't speak the same language. The business is thinking about how they need to run the business, what they need to do, and IT is thinking about technology. And there's not someone in between that can translate between those two groups, and that oftentimes creates bad design. So if you don't have someone that speaks both those languages, make sure you find someone involved in the project that can do that. So a camel is a horse designed by committee. Good design, planning, thinking through, that's what's going to get good design. Lastly, touching upon change management, and it really ties to people needing to understand why. A lot of times people are just told you should do something, but it doesn't work that way. If you think about change and changing people, a lot of times when you look at change management, people think of that as a fluffy word, but what does it really mean to manage change? Change is difficult. If you think about your family and friends and you want them to change their behavior or do something different, it takes a lot of time. It's not that different in the business world. I think the only difference is there's maybe a little less emotional baggage, but it still takes time to change people's behavior. So some of the things that you can do to help with change management, spending the time to help people see things differently, finding your change champions. So a lot of times there are people that can help you with change, people who want this change, who are going to support you with that. So during an implementation, who are those people? It's kind of like marketing and word of mouth. If you find those people, they can really help you spread the word and get people on board to doing something differently. You want to try more than once. Just because you sent out one email, you did one training session, it does not mean people will follow those steps, especially when the change is big. Also, if the company's big, it also requires even more change management because you're touching upon a lot of end users. So really spending the time, trying more than once, and communicate, communicate, communicate. Research, there's so many research studies out there that talk about how long it takes for people to change habits. Sorry, I just got a time check. And I think you can debate how many days, how many tries it takes, but one thing is for sure, it takes time and it takes more than once. Already talked about this. You want to train, you want to communicate, you want to roll it out. You maybe want to roll it out to multiple groups in different phases, and maybe you want to do it all at once. It really depends on your business and your company structure. And then you want to support it. So just to end on, I know I'm talking really fast, all the parts add up. So people and planning, making sure that you have the right people involved, that you create a really good plan for how you're going to implement something, designing a good process, finding good software and technology to automate that process, tracking good data. I know there's a lot of talk about big data. You want to track data that serves a purpose and not just track data just because. All of that ends up with a good result for any type of technology implementation. Lastly, just a quick thing about Simple Legal. We are a legal spend and management software, so if you have any questions, we have folks here. And then if you have questions about implementation in general for any kind of technology, feel free to come up to me. I know that this was 5 minutes. I tried to boil it down to a very short talk and just highlight the key things. Good design, plan, and then manage the change. Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out for Evolve Law tonight. Really appreciate it. And we're going to be moderating this panel on Tech Savvy General Counsel, Tech Savvy In-House Counsel. So tonight I'm joined here by, I'm just going to give quick intros, Dan Rawls. Dan is a longtime general counsel. He's currently general counsel at Zap Labs in San Francisco Bay Area and brings interesting perspective. Steph Corey is a legal ops executive, has been in the legal industry a long time, and she's currently principal at her company, which is Up Level Ops. And then we have Joel Benavides, who is actually also our host tonight at Box. Joel has been at Box for a number of years, holding various roles in legal ops and, of course, general counsel and deputy general counsel, et cetera. So with that, we'll get started. And kicking off the panel, we're going to kind of begin with talking a little bit about the rise of sort of legal ops and how the legal industry is changing. And so I want to put a question initially to you guys on the panel about legal ops and sort of what are you seeing? How have you sort of seen the legal industry evolve, and what kinds of sort of changes are you seeing right now in the legal industry?
Okay. I think, legal ops, especially in the last 5 years, has completely changed. But I think one of the more interesting things I'm seeing now that, I was in-house for almost 20 years, and now I'm running a legal ops consulting company, is that with the companies that we're helping, even very, very small companies are already starting to implement legal operations programs, and we didn't see that before. We really saw that, the more mature departments, okay, we have 30 lawyers, 50 people on staff. Now maybe it's time to bring in a legal operations person, but we're seeing even one person. We have 3 clients who are solo general counsels now who really know that they need to scale, they need to do more with less, and so they're already thinking about legal operations and have brought us in for advice and help in this area.
Yeah. Well, it certainly, I think that legal operations, it's really necessary to implement the overall vision that the legal department has. It's certainly part of the overall corporate strategy. And what I mean by that is that there are many initiatives within in-house counsel or whether you're a law firm. For example, getting ready for the GDPR, coming into effect next year, in May of next year. That would be an example of something that you really need to have a team in place. And the legal operations person will play a very significant role in bringing the different parts of the team to be able to work together with compliance, with engineering, with the overall organization in the company to make sure that you are going to be able to meet these deadlines. And if you don't have somebody leading those efforts in the legal team, I think it will be extremely difficult to come anywhere close to meeting these requirements, for example. And that's just one example of one significant requirement that will be company-wide and something that you really need to help drive.
Yeah, so the panel's not limited to 5 minutes, is it?
No.
So yeah, as just an in-house general counsel, I think there's 2 things I've seen kind of the rise of legal ops. One is the last 5 years, the proliferation of a lot of cloud technology that's really simplified doing things in-house, and the increase of things like GDPR and the need to bridge I guess just legal requirements with data privacy people and security people and stuff like that. So I've seen those 2 things really lead to that rise.
Great. Those are great comments. And in terms of, as we sort of begin to dive a little deeper into some of the other topics like tech and culture and so forth, just kind of taking a pulse, how do you measure success in your legal departments? I mean, what does success look like in this current environment in which we operate for a legal department?
I think it is really important that when you're spending all of this money in technology and all of the resources, they are able to use metrics and be able to really measure how effective your use of that technology is. There's no way for you to measure ROI on that if you don't have significant and measurable metrics by which you can really tell whether somebody is really not only using the technology, but applying it in the right manner. Are you not overspending in certain areas? Are you spending in the right areas, in the right technology? And is the adoption across the department being followed? If you don't have teams that are, in fact, using all of the tools at their disposal, I think it will be extremely difficult for a team to work cohesively and be able to achieve the goals of the organization. And above and beyond that, you may have attorneys or members of the legal team who are really savvy with technology, and they are going to be using technology whether the overall department has blessed that technology or not. So I think it's very important to keep an eye on that and who's using what and how, so that you maintain that use under control.
Steph or Dan?
Okay, so great point. And so I think one of the things that the exercise I would always do at the general counsel is at the beginning of the year, you do your strategic planning. And so that would be, spending some time with the GC and his or her staff, really understanding what the goals were for the year, and understanding at that high level what the legal department needed to accomplish in order to better serve clients, better meet meet that CEO's vision. And then our perspective as the legal operations professionals, then we had to turn that around and say, okay, now that's the what, and now we're the how. And so how do we go ahead and operationalize those, the mission, vision, the strategic goals? And so like Joel said, those metrics are really critical because at the end of the year, you have to be able to, the general counsel has the meeting with the CEO, and you have to go, be able to prove that you've made progress towards those goals. And so whether it's, processing more contracts, whether it's servicing clients better, whether it's reducing outside counsel spend, whether it's all of those things, which it probably is, it's how do you actually measure success and, have those metrics in place to make sure that you're, driving those initiatives. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my thoughts on it, it's weird because especially here in Silicon Valley, we're in such a data-driven culture and everyone's checking everything against data and quantifying everything. And of course, there are budgets and goals that you measure stuff against, but every year when I hit KPIs with my CEO about probably my bonus, which is usually the success of what I'm doing at the company, we hit certain numbers. And just to let you all know, I'm kind of weird in that, well, I'm kind of weird, but my role is weird in that I'm the general counsel of a company that was acquired by a larger company. So half of my job is to keep the 50 lawyers on the East Coast at bay to keep my culture at my company what it is. Not that those are bad people, everyone's fantastic. It's just very different cultures. So part of my job is to manage that. So, and what I've held at every company I've been general counsel at before is the success of my department in general is, do people come to me with issues and problems that aren't necessarily legal problems, but they think they might be. And then the second test is, do they ever come back? And if they come back, I know that I've been doing things pretty good. And then when it comes to utilization of technology, at the end of the year, what's been the spend and what's been, has it really been useful? That's usually the two things I kind of look at in the overall scheme of we're succeeding, and kind of what are the tools that we're using, and do we need to rethink how we're implementing stuff.
Yeah, interesting. Sort of hitting on an EQ and even customer orientation perspective as well. So that's sort of, as we segue into technology, let's talk a little bit about tech. You guys have all sort of touched on tech. What would you say, okay, your law department's stranded on a desert island and you can pick only one or two technologies for your law department. What would you find are the most mission critical technologies that you think your law department needs to have?
Well, this is going to be self-serving, but I would definitely say a good collaboration. Content collaboration
I didn't pay you to say that.
No, in reality, I think that if we have seen one thing is that everybody's going to the cloud. And regardless of the type of business that you're in, whether you are providing sophisticated legal services or in a vertical, a pharma, in the financial sector, et cetera, or even if you're selling cinder blocks, you're always using technology that it is in the cloud, whether it's email, whether it's your HR systems, and so forth. Everything is really in the cloud. And I think that you really need to utilize it to its logical end, which is to be able to run metrics on the systems that you're using, how you're using it, who's using it, and be able to use those systems that are actually talking to each other. And first and foremost, I would definitely say that ensure that they are secure, that they're meeting the compliance requirements that you will be responsible for, whether you are a data controller or a data processor under the EU regulations. And in fact, most jurisdictions on a global basis are going to hold you to some standard of care with regards to not only the clients, but the end users, right? The content, the data that is stored, that you're handling, those emails, those communications that you have. And in fact, if I'm wrong, the rules of professional conduct actually require you to keep abreast with the latest developments in technology. So it's not only a professional responsibility that you have, but also a just logical and good business sense.
And you're a lawyer by training, right? I think it's interesting because certainly everything you've said is absolutely true. I would say that if I was stranded on a desert island and could only pick one technology, though, it might focus around finance. And the reason I say that, and again, everything you said was true, but I always recommend to legal departments that until you really know what you're spending and you get your arms around that spend and can analyze that data, how do you justify making any kind of investment in any other areas? So e-billing to me is really the baseline system. It's really critical to, no matter what your spend is, I would say anything over $1 million, you really, or even less if you want to, like I said, we have these really tiny companies who are even starting sooner than that. You really do want to start, if you think your spend is going to grow, you really do want to start getting your arms around that. And once you can start analyzing, then you can justify making those investments in other areas, whether it's more technology or people development or whatever. So, but I have a finance background, so that's maybe a bias there.
One piece of technology?
Or two.
Okay. Only give you one.
Okay.
I would pick Reddit when I'm on conference calls. Does that count? But then that's
No.
two. I can't.
Does it count?
Yeah, I think just the simple collaboration software, not to plug any one, but I think that's the most important thing. Pretty simple.
Okay. And we heard a little bit earlier about change management, one of the Darwin talks, and this does come up a lot with tech adoption or buying new systems for a department. What are some pain points you have experienced? How have you managed in your departments or departments that you consult, in your case, Stephanie, how have you managed to sort of help clients or in your own departments deal with change management, navigating this adoption of the new technology?
Yeah, and Tina even talked about this a few minutes ago. It's the hardest part, and I would say, I've actually doing legal operations for as long as I've been doing it, I've suffered some pretty big failures And it's hard to recover from those. And so it's hard to win back that goodwill in the department once you've lost it, because trying to get lawyers to, adopt this new technology to begin with is tough. And then if you screw up and try to shove something down their throats that they're not going to like, trying to come back and say, oh, no, I promise this one will be better, it doesn't always go over so well. And so I think, really my advice when you start looking at a new technology is, I guess it's twofold. One is make sure that it's something that the department really wants. And so when I was in-house, I would actually I would kind of educate the lawyers on what was available and what was out there, but then I'd almost wait till they came to me to say, yeah, this is something we really need, so I could make sure there was a demand for it. Because when you try to kind of shove something down their throats, they're not going to use it. They're not going to adopt it. And then once they figure out, yes, this is something that I want, of course, it's everything that you think about change management. Get them in very early, get them involved, make sure you're asking them for their feedback. And then at the end of the day, they can say, they're bought in. They can say, yeah, I was involved in this process. And even if you don't go with the technology at the end of the day that they wanted, you pick something else, at least you've justified along the way why you went with this other technology. So I think it's constant communication. It just never ends. They should be sick of seeing, getting messages from you. You should be communicating that often, or else I think it's really hard for people to swallow those new technologies unless you're doing that.
Okay, good suggestions.
So just to add to that, and I think the problem is twofold. On the one hand, you have those that resist, adopting new technology. And on the other hand, you have the ones who just run with something that they like and they find easy to use or is the latest trend. And that's something that you really have to watch because, obviously on the second example, you can really run afoul of your contracts, your obligations with, your customers, and the texting, if it's a texting application, or some kind of messaging system, the communications may not be encrypted, and you are discussing very sensitive, client or customer or internal client information, and it can be exposed. It's not encrypted while in transit, or sometimes even while at rest, and the data it's really could easily be broken into, and your M&A client will be really in a tough spot. For example, in a very time sensitive type of matter. And on the other hand, you have folks that really need a technology 101 where you really need to work with them and encourage them to ask the dumb questions. I mean, I raise my hand. I ask dumb questions all the time. Because this is really the way that you really make sure that you understand that you really get the technology and how people use it more efficiently. And needless to say, it's imperative that you work very closely with your IT department and with your CISO, your ICO, to ensure that you're really adopting the technology that is needed and it is within the strategic policies and roadmap of the company.
Yeah, I really agree with all that. And I think also you have to look at not just the culture of your legal department and building the desire for something, but I look at the legal department as having a broader culture than that, because anything you have in the legal department is going to extend beyond it. So if there's some kind of equity system that's going to reach the finance team, that's going to reach the comp committee, if you have some type of contract management system that's going to affect finance and sales and biz dev. So there has to be a larger cultural buy-in as well, and it's looking at the legal department as more interconnected and having a larger chain reaction than just internally.
Yeah, and then a lot of us here are obviously in the legal tech ecosystem. I'm founder of Foxworthy, and we've got folks here that are founder of many other companies and involved with other companies. I'm curious, what we've seen and hearing a lot of new technologies in the legal tech space, of course, AI and chatbots, things like that. What are your thoughts on, in your departments, adoption of these types of new technologies? Are you doing that? Are you seeing law departments do this? And is it just a trend? What are your thoughts?
Well, my philosophy is I try, just because I have a small legal department, theoretically, that it's just me, even though I'm part of a 100-something person legal department, but I always try to focus on the technologies that my teams are using locally. So if, pick the flavor of the week, Slack, HipChat, or whatever, new thing comes up, I try to follow and communicate on the platforms that my business people and product people are communicating on. That's not really a legal technology, but it's something that's important to me, so I know what's going on and what's being developed, and issues do come up, and it's easy to see that way. I've seen slower adoption just in the legal department stuff alone. I think lawyers tend to be slower to adopt pure legal things anyway when it comes to tech. I remember when I first started my law firm, this was a million years ago, they were still using, there was one guy still using WordStar. This was in the mid-90s. So he retired pretty soon after that. But I think that still is not maybe a generational thing. I'm not sure, but I still see that there's a slower, I'm sure you see that all the time.
When we talk to clients, I look at kind of two things. One is, what do they already have in their department that they can further maximize or optimize? And so a lot of people have moved to Office 365, and they're certainly not fully using all the capabilities within that system. They're paying for it, but they're not using it. And so we look at, what have you already got? Let's fully maximize that. There's lots of collaboration and all kinds of things, even workflows that you can do with these tools that you've already got. And then for the cool stuff that's coming out, we even with our new clients, we do look at, our teeny tiny clients, we do look at these really cool technologies. We have one very small legal department in San Francisco at an AI toy company, and we just made a connection with her and this contracting company that truly has AI built into their analytics tool. And even we're skipping over that traditional CLM with her and just focusing on AI because we think this will be a better fit for her, which is unusual. Usually, there's a maturity life cycle that you go through with technology where you implement the, fundamental systems, and then, then when you've kind of outgrown them, move to different systems. But now with all this cool technology that's actually not just slideware, so to speak, it's actually feasible to implement these. We're making some recommendations to clients that they start looking at that. So it's a cool time.
Yeah, no, I think definitely we are seeing exciting times. Whether it's ML and AI and how we can best leverage that technology that is available and the functionality. But I would like to go back to one of my initial statements, and that is that we really need to ensure that whoever application you're using is that they have a rich and systemic use of the security measures that really everybody expects at this point, and the data privacy compliance measures that are needed. And then certainly, I will really ensure that I know darn well where the data is residing, which is the repository. So that, a lot of times, you will have to rely on these systems as a system of record. So I think it's very important to ensure that you are definitely compliant with these requirements.
Do you expect your outside counsel or outside counsel of companies you consult, do you expect the outside counsel to use the systems that you're buying? What are your thoughts on sort of the relationship with the outside counsel? And we'll touch on that in a little bit, but first, interested in to what extent do they use the systems or expected to get on board with systems you've bought?
Yeah, I think that increasingly, consultants and outside counsel and all of the, the ecosystem of providers of legal services are adopting technology themselves. And we are fortunate to live in an area where there's so many innovative people, such as a lot of the folks that we have here tonight that have fantastic applications that are very useful and save us a lot of time and money. So I think that you definitely want to be working with those providers that maximize the use of technology and you're able to derive savings from their use of that technology.
I think there's more room for that too. So where, we spend a lot of time talking to law firms on how they can better partner with their clients, and they know that legal operations is a real thing now. And so they've started to pay attention. I think, early on they were like, oh, I just hope this position goes away and the general counsel, gets rid of this role. But I think they're finally seeing that this is, a position that's not going away, and so they have to pay attention to it. And I do think that there's more room for some kind of collaboration. Certainly around finances, certainly around collaborating on matters and such. I don't know what else that looks like, but I think in the future we are going to see more and more. We have software providers who are providing technology for in-house teams. We have software providers who are providing them for law firms, and I think we'll see some conversion of that over the next 5-10 years.
Great. And Dan, from your perspective, how have outside counsel relationships evolved, and where do you see them going?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Different companies, as you know, I've taken advantage of kind of inside, outside counsel, or is it outside? I don't know. Gets too complicated. But to really outsource things like MSA negotiations or sales-related things that obviously lighten the load inside, so we can focus on other strategic issues. And it's interesting, talking to the lawyers on the East Coast, I think they've been clued into the fact that there are new alternative structures and functions at law firms that aren't just, kind of traditional mega firm things. So I think there is more of a people have turned their attention to new ways to do things with law firms.
Mm-hmm. And what about alternative legal service providers, alternative fee arrangements? Are you seeing clients demanding these now? Is this what they're expecting to see? And maybe are they handling this through an RFP process, or how are they sort of pursuing those relationships?
There was a statistic that just came out. I think it was through Concilio, and Brad Blickenstein does this survey, and it was something really significant. Like 30% of law departments are now sending a significant amount of work to alternative service providers. And it's one of the first things that we look at if clients bring us in to do an outside counsel assessment, a spend assessment. One of the first things we look at is, how much are you spending with big firms? What are the rates you're getting? Are you using alternative fee arrangements? And what kind of work can you push to lower cost providers? So we do that on the inside as well. How many senior attorneys do you have versus junior attorneys? And can you push that work down? And you don't want your senior attorneys doing junior work. It's not good for them. It doesn't develop them. It's not very satisfying. And you want to hire in that lower level to develop them into the senior role. And the same thing with outside counsel. There's definitely a time and a place for these alternative service providers, and it's not going away. It's only increasing.
I was going to ask. You want to add something, Dan, to that, or no? Okay. Want to sort of ask about what are you seeing in terms of trends on measuring performance of outside counsel, and sort of how is that success of performance measured? Is it purely economic? Is it a combined set of factors, and are you using technologies to sort of measure that performance?
Yeah, obviously there are different considerations that go into those metrics. But let me first say that I think that it's very important to develop relationships with outside counsel. Whoever it is that is providing the service to you, if you're able to develop these relationships of good working dynamic and trust, I think that the possibility of deriving a good alternative models for fee arrangements and the like kind of work themselves out a little bit better, and then most of us operate on a global basis, and we work with specialists in many different fields. As a matter of fact, just earlier today I had a conversation with Swiss Counsel on banking laws. Very specific, type of advice, and tomorrow we could be talking to somebody on AI, and what will be the ramifications of AI running analysis on images, for example, with regards to data privacy, and so forth. So I think these are very specialized, in a lot of instances, they're very specialized relationships. And I think that, the relationship building and the really understanding, from the counsel understanding the customer, the client is really important to be able to work well together like that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I excuse me, I agree with that. I think the most important thing for me, because different groups of firms have different specialties, but at any firm, my most important relationship is with the relationship partner with whom I have contact and who can take care of issues and who sets the expectations, excuse me, for budget and results. And that's really the main line I have to judge the work of the firm and to address any problems. So that's always my main line. It's more of a qualitative thing than quantitative, but that's the most important thing to me.
Fair enough. Okay. What about data security? I know this has been a huge issue, obviously, in the news with the Equifax breach. How important are your clients or your law departments looking at outside counsel from sort of a data security perspective and expecting certain data security standards to be met now?
Yeah, well, let me first say that without data security, you have nothing.
Right.
So I think it's a dictum that really applies. And we are entrusted with very sensitive data from our own customers, their clients, and so forth. Is their partners. It's a long chain of trust that we have to maintain. And for any provider of services to any corporation to come in and not have the best security measures that he or she, if it's an individual practitioner or if it is a firm that can be implemented, I think it is a huge disservice and really a dereliction of duty to the customer if those measures are not followed and not enforced. And I just don't know of any major corporation that will work with a provider of services that just is not willing and able to stand up to these requirements.
Absolutely.
It's funny because I had my identity stolen and then I signed up with Equifax to put a credit watch and protect it, and that, it's stolen again. So I can't seem to win here. But I think when being in-house, we asked all the right questions in the RFP, but I think we make a lot of assumptions that our law firms are, doing the right thing in this area. And I know that when I was in-house, we certainly didn't go out and audit them. Now with vendors, it's a little bit different. Software providers, because we had a data security team who, the software providers would have to jump through the hoops to, get the green light from our software, from our in-house data privacy people, and security. So we were really rigorous about vetting those folks, but not so much the law firms. I think in-house we really fell short there. And so we do talk to clients about that and, tell them, it is something that you do need to pay attention to, especially, think of these law firms are dealing with the most sensitive data. But I think there's a lot of room there. There's still a gap.
Yeah.
So the question was regarding what law firm resources we're looking at?
What data security expectations that you have of your outside law firms?
With them helping us with our data security or with their data
Well,
security?
with their data security. So any information matters they're handling, maybe they're working on M&A transactions. Are there any kind of data security requirements that you would expect law firms to be adhering to?
I don't even know that we look at those. And it's funny because law firms are almost like this black box.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And having been at a large firm, I'm not going to name which one, I'm sure they're great. I'm sure they're great with it now. But like I said before, law firms have always struggled with technology. So I don't know that I share super sensitive data with any firms aside from confidential matters. But I don't think we've ever once probably looked into, sent out any vendor we have that handles any other type of data at our company. Of course, we have an entire data team, security team that sends out a huge questionnaire and they do the whole spiel and it comes back and you're good to go. But I don't think I've ever looked closely at a law firm for that because it's probably a blind spot in our profession. It's just a black box. You're like, well, it's a law firm. So I'll just send them because they're legally obligated to keep this quiet, but that's not going to matter when there's a breach.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I mean, let's not forget that, come of May or next year, your clients can be subject to 4% of their world turnover, global turnover, or $20 million, whichever is greater, if they have a significant enough breach of personal information from EU data subjects. So that's just an example of significant fines, let alone an M&A deal that can be derailed, or patent filings that can get out into the woods, and all of a sudden all of this highly sensitive work is potentially exposed.
Yep, exactly. What are you seeing as some of the top strategic priorities for general counsel and legal ops combined in your companies or companies that you're consulting? What kind of trends are you seeing for strategic priorities right now?
The top things that we're seeing are two things that at least we're being asked to come in and consult on. It's legal spend and technology. And so, and I'm sure, I'm looking forward to hearing the other panelists' responses, because they'll look at it from a more strategic angle, I'm sure. But from my perspective, all of the legal departments that we're working with, and when I was in-house, we certainly focused on getting the most out of our resources. It's doing more with less. And so we're watching the legal department, the ever-shrinking legal department budget being asked. We were literally asked to shrink 5% every year when I was at Flex. And so, with law firm expenses going up 3 to 7% every year, the math just didn't work out. And so for us, it was really, again, it went to pushing work down to the lowest level, outsourcing where it made sense. We actually had a captive LSO in India. They're Flextronics employees, and it worked so well. I mean, we had a big legal team there who can actually do substantive legal work, and that took a lot of time to get that up and running. And running smoothly, so we can actually push that substantive legal work to them. But it really is all about doing more with less resources available. And so it's focusing on the spend and getting the most out of our internal resources and automating wherever we could.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great.
So yeah, I've seen over the last, I've been in-house since 2005. A big trend, and it's always been my concern as general counsel, is how does my department fit culturally into the company, and what is my impact, and how are we fitting in? Because the more you're integrated, the earlier you're included on stuff, and the less fallout you're going to have on issues. So I think people should have a strategic priority on that, because it impacts your spend, it impacts your effectiveness, it impacts everything about your department. On a slightly less strategic piece, but still really important, is everyone's super excited about data, like so excited. They just walk around just asking, like, when are we getting data? And you're like, that's a very broad noun you're asking for, because with data, there's privacy issues, there's confidentiality issues. GDPR is going to be a huge womp in the spring if people aren't already freaking out about it, which they generally are. So, like, if you're not part of a team at your company as a lawyer, or if someone on the legal team isn't talking about that, then your future is really limited. And that's going back to, I think, cultural inclusion. There should be a natural tendency, and talk about what we were talking about with the function of legal ops before, is to be that kind of bridge to these different pieces of the company, because it's so important when it comes to everyone's excitement for getting data, both kind of on the business analytics side, and then on the debate between when it comes to privacy issues, is it ownership, is it control? Those are huge strategic issues that I think need to be figured out within the legal department.
Definitely, and just to add to that, another trend that we're very keen on, and that is part of the overall strategy, I think, in the long run, is to utilize, be able to utilize AI. I mean, think about it. Do you want to be, redlining contracts and going back and forth all day, redlining and accepting changes and all of that? I mean, I did that for 15 years, and it gets old. I think that a lot of that will certainly be done by algorithms that are, have enough information to be able to analyze different contracts and be able to provide that functionality, for the legal teams. Obviously, those types of technologies are really good as to who is doing it and what's the change. Not so good at the why. So they're always going to require sophisticated and experienced humans to oversee the work product, so to speak, of these algorithms, and be able to decide whether it's that negotiated agreement is ready to be released and put a approval stamp on and sign. So I think that is a very significant change that is coming, and I think that we all need to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Clearly, you're all in favor of sort of the legal ops role, obviously, and the importance of it. What are your predictions for how the legal ops role will evolve in the near future, or maybe in the next 3 to 5 years?
I think, we're going to see, I think it becoming a more formalized role in every legal department, no matter what size. I don't want to say every legal department because that's a little unrealistic. But like I said, even with these small companies who we're talking to, they're already starting to think about this because they know they have to figure out a way to scale, and they're not going to be able to throw bodies, that you just can't hire like you used to. It's hard to get that head count. So I think we're going to see, rather than trying to have the lawyers, hey, you focus on budgeting, you're going to focus on streamlining the contracting process, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be doing HR, you're going to be doing my communications. It's not realistic to try to spread this work across the department for too long. It bogs down the attorneys, and so I think to move those attorneys up the value chain and have them doing more substantive legal work, you're going to have to start formalizing this role. So you don't bring in somebody who's super senior to a small department necessarily. Like you wouldn't hire somebody with 20 years legal operations experience if you're, one person legal department. But as you grow, maybe you start grooming somebody who's junior, but to start managing all these functions and getting it off the plates of the attorneys. So I think, with the technologies, I think, we talked a little bit about the technologies getting cheaper and easier to implement. And so smaller legal departments can implement things very quickly now where they couldn't before. They're not cost prohibitive like they used to be. And you need somebody to manage that. And it's not going to be an attorney who's, working 24/7 on legal matters. It's going to have to be a business person. So I think you're going to start to see this role become more and more prevalent even in the much smaller legal departments.
Yeah, I definitely see that role as that person really being a strategic partner to the corporation, to the entity, because the legal team itself and generally you see in this trend, driven by the general counsel, the legal team itself has become a strategic partner to the business overall, and that's really necessary. Again, because of the security issues involved, the data privacy issues, compliance, and so forth. And if the company doesn't have a good roadmap to meet those requirements, the legal team just becomes a huge spend hole and everything, a huge drain as compared to being a value add team that is actually able to help drive business because you can show clearly that you have the certifications that you need and that you're meeting all of these different compliance requirements, that you have the security measures, and that you understand, what these are on a global basis.
Mm-hmm. And Dan, you've been in legal departments where there have not been legal ops roles and folks on staff who are, wearing a legal ops hat. What is your perspective? How critical is the role, and what are your thoughts?
I think any department can benefit from it. It just depends on where the resources are. Right now, I don't have one because, it's just me. We have that function at our parent company. I operate somewhat independently. In fact, a lot of my job is trying to avoid the processes that are being implemented on the East Coast so we can operate a little more freely on the West Coast. But you can always benefit from it. It just depends on, again, the culture of the company and where you are in your growth phase at that point.
Mm-hmm. And Steph, you touched on something about even small legal departments can really implement legal ops oriented processes relatively rapidly now and at lower costs than in the past. What would you say are some of the greatest barriers, so this is posed to all of you, what would you say are some of the greatest barriers to law departments kind of getting out of their own way and allowing themselves to take advantage of the technologies and the resources that are out there, alternative service providers and other things that will allow them to do more with less and work more efficiently?
I think thinking out of the box, so to speak. So, I think attorneys are kind of trained, everything's based on precedents and like they're used to doing things a certain way. And so I think even using LSOs that was a tough step early on. I remember when I was at HP and the first thought of, legal work being done in India and everybody's hair was on fire and we could never do that. And now it's a matter of, so many of us do that. It's just day-to-day life in the legal world, and so I think a barrier to legal departments is just letting thinking out of the box and letting that old thinking go and being willing to look at new ways of doing things. And I think sometimes that requires a little fresh blood coming into the department, and so I think some attrition is healthy, and hiring in new people who can think about things a little bit differently is good, and hiring in people who are legal professionals but not necessarily attorneys adds a good mix. So I think and really diversity too is a big thing. So when you hire in people who come from a different background than you do, you're going to get different ideas and you're going to draw different conclusions. And so I think getting in a little new blood doesn't hurt to change the culture a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Control issues.
That sums it up. Okay. Joel, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think that, and I don't want to sound a little bit silly, but, change is a universal constant. So I think you really need to embrace, changes in technology, changes in your customers' needs, whether they are, outside external customers or internal clients. And the only way that you can do that is by really, despite hesitation and fear, really, partner up with different vendors and see what they have to offer, and really look at the technology that they're bringing to the table, and see, what's their partnership ecosystem, or can they, can the services they're providing, work seamlessly with other technology that you're already using, and what is the roadmap, to make that happen if that's not the case. And so I think these are, very important considerations. And, frankly, if you are not using technology, you're not evaluating the technology that is available, I would say that we're just not doing our job.
Mm-hmm. And how about, our culture has evolved in many ways to sort of adopting more of a remote work culture. And a lot of departments allow some work from home, and there's, of course, video conferencing, et cetera. Have you found that these cultural trends have impacted law departments in terms of the technologies that are valued, and also secondarily, the influx of millennials in the workforce? Have those two factors kind of changed the type of technologies and solutions that legal departments are looking at now?
Yeah, I know. I mean, our company as a whole, we rely on a lot of work collaboration software. So if whether someone's in the office or not doesn't really make a huge difference, and that also applies to the East Coast. So I think that has helped a lot, and also not having complete remote working helps a lot. And I love working from home, except when my kids are home. But having a good mix of personal presence, and then the always being present when you are remote, and in software that everyone in your company buys into is really important.
I think I see a lot of more flexibility now, certainly than 10 years ago. And so as, working in-house at Flex, actually right before I left, they instituted a policy that you had to be in the office, and the employees freaked out. And so, but every other company that I talk to and benchmark with and work for, really a lot of flexibility is built into their culture, and because of that, I think you draw better talent. Look at where we live, and I drove up to San Francisco this morning, and it took me 2 hours to get there. If I had to do that every single day, there's no way you can spend 4 hours in a car. And so I think employers recognize that they have to, if they want to attract good talent, people just don't want to sit in a cube for 10 hours a day. And besides, sitting is the new smoking, right? We should all get up and dance around now because our telomeres are shrinking. But I think that you attract a better talent, you get a more diverse workforce, and all of those things are good. And I think it encourages creativity, and the days of, like the Yahoo and unfortunately Flex days of having to sit in a cube for 10 or 12 hours, they're gone, thank goodness. And I think we're seeing it more, it's starting in Silicon Valley, I think, and spreading. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of value in having a remote work policy. Have generally always been at headquarters, whether it was at Civil Systems or VMware or here. I also see the value of running across somebody and resolving an issue in 2 minutes, as compared to having to chase somebody over a call or 10 emails later coming to resolution. But in order to we live on a global scale. Collaboration, it's something that has really allowed us to be anywhere in the world and be able to be in contact with each other, whether it is through Slack, email, GChat, video, conferencing, you name it. All of these tools are available, and I think that as long as you have a team that it is conscientious and responsive, I don't really care where they are. You still get work done. I mean, we are constantly working with folks in Tokyo, in Frankfurt, in Paris, and Canada, and so forth. Basically, any time. If something is to be done, you just have to get it done. It may not be, if something is not urgent, then you can defer it. But there are instances where you are going to be on a call at 2 a.m., and that's just the way it is.
And then in terms of sort of wrapping up, last few questions, what is one piece of advice that you would give to in-house counsel about something that they should be doing or thinking about right now when it comes to technology or tools or process or outsourced providers? What is maybe that one piece of advice that you'd want to give to in-house counsel?
I would say, regardless of your fears, you really have to, you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your clients, to your partners, to really have an open mind and evaluate technology and give it its due. Really try to understand that, what it is that they're doing, where are they going with that. And I think that, again, if you have a good trust relationship with that ecosystem, the possibilities are really endless.
Great comment.
I think that your operational intelligence is an asset, and I think it gives you so much credibility with the CEO and the CFO, and you can really prove to go back to the point about data, you can really prove that you're becoming more efficient and doing better and just progressing with when you implement these programs and these metrics and software and all of these tools. So I think it's something that general counsels really need to embrace, and like Joel said, just dive in, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. I think that's another thing that we really counsel on, is just do a handful of things, and in 6 months, 12 months, you're going to see that you've really moved the needle far. You don't have to implement a huge, gigantic program. Just pick 3 things and do them, and next year you're going to see how much you've progressed over that year. And so you just got to do it. Take those steps.
Great.
Yeah, just to reiterate, I think a few points. One is make sure any solution is something that works in your business culture, no matter who's using it. Otherwise, no one's going to want to use it, and then it's going to be that thing that one person has to log into once a week, and they dread it. And what was the other thing I was going to say? Oh yeah, this has been said a couple times, but technology is supposed to make things easier. So don't take like a manual process that you had and then replicate it with technology. In fact, I hate using the word technology because when people describe the platform that my company has, they call this something, the Zap technology platform. I'm like, why are you saying technology? We should be talking about the outcome. We should be talking about the solution, and not that it's technology, not that it's doing something. So when you implement something or when you're trying to solve a problem, make sure that your technology, I said it, make sure that that it actually addresses a solution and doesn't just take this complicated thing that was this ridiculous pass the baton through your company before, and you've just made it that, but with ones and zeros.
That's such an excellent point. Yeah. So if you can squeeze the juice with your hand, you don't need a $400 machine to do it.
Juicero, yeah. Right. That's a really great point for sure. Okay, last question, sort of the moonshot question. In 10 years, what does the future law department look like?
I think heavy use of AI and algorithms that are truly helpful. And as a result of that, because I think we will see the futility of going back and forth with endless rounds of red lines, we will see us to be a lot more sensible and understand how to better do business with our own customers and our vendors. And I think it will be a natural result of just seeing this bit of madness that goes back and forth with fighting over a few red lines here and there, or the limitation of liability when there's only so much you can do, and you allocate the prices, the price and the cost of the system that you are providing, the service you're providing, based on the what really you believe is the allocation of risk, and the market says that that's the right allocation of risk.
I agree. I think heavy use of AI, I don't think that's going away anytime soon. And I think more simplistic technologies. So as before, systems used to take 3 years and cost $1 million to implement. Those days are long gone. So I think you're going to see more affordability and ease of use in the future. And I think more integration between the systems. So rather than this is my e-billing system, this is my contracting system, this is that, I think you're going to see, some more, I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think we're going to see more convergence of all the legal department kind of maybe into one platform that we can manage all of our legal functions through that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that before, and there's such a temptation to have right now people try to put in these very complex solutions, and like you were saying about Office 365 or Microsoft Word, I use probably the bullet thing and bold and indent and that little skew morph disk to save stuff. But I think in the future there will be more, AI's, I think, a given it's going to happen, and I think there will be more unifying interfaces that allow solutions to talk to each other to create a holistic solution, so you can mix and match what you like instead of, say, one preset platform that you may not want or use all the stuff. Just the way cord cutters are going more a la carte, I think software and data is going to flow that way with a lot more middle pieces.
Great, fascinating. Well, thank you all. This has been a wonderful panel, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to moderate this panel tonight. So thanks, everyone.
All right. Well, my name is Tom Spalding. I'm with Inventus, and I made the wise decision of packing 30 minutes of content into a 5-minute presentation. So, if I do sound like the Micro Machines guy, I apologize in advance. So let's just dive right into this. Topic I'm going to be discussing is risk that corporate counsel face, and then the ways that data analytics can help mitigate those risks. And I think we can start with what keeps GCs up at night. And if anyone looks like this, or if anyone's GC looks like this, they should pay particular attention. In 2016, the ACC asked 300 GCs and CLOs what keeps them up at night. And if you look at the answers that are given, ethics and compliance, 71%, regulatory issues, challenges, data breaches all about 60% and higher, you kind of get a sense that those are big issues, yet there's very little that is actually done to mitigate those. And why are they big? All you have to do is open up a newspaper, I guess now more commonly a web browser, and look at the news and just see the headlines. Whether it's IP theft being taken from a company internally, or if it's externally getting taken. Heck, you just look at the Equifax scenario, and then from data breach litigation, and also the fallout from that can also impact other areas. Fraud, scandal, ethics and compliance issues, antitrust, regulatory issues that not only cost companies a lot of money to defend, but can also cost a lot in fines. So what can be done? And I think this is a great segue from the prior panel of distinguished experts that kind of live in that world of dashboards and data analytics. And that's kind of what we're seeing on our end too. We're seeing a much more proactive approach, whereas it used to be that corporate counsel was much more reactive. So we're seeing proactive monitoring and analysis. And what does that mean? And I kind of liken it to getting a health checkup. You want preventative information to change your ways, whether it's going on a diet or eating less meat or whatever it is. And we do that by gathering information via data analytics. So in this case, your health checkup will be gathering all the information that's relevant to the issue that you're looking at for your corporation, gathering that information, putting it all together, and then allowing some smart culling of that data to get informative dashboards out of it. And we can do that with peer benchmarking. So in that healthcare example, your sex, your age, and what category you fit in. And then you can also do things like apply weighted scoring for risk-based scenario, so you can identify the outliers that you can attack first, or at least be preventative. And then further along are investigation techniques that, if you're dealing with fraud, you can use the use of the fraud triangle. This is where also machine learning comes in, artificial intelligence, even keyword searching and things like that to identify the low-hanging fruit and the outliers so you can get in front of it. So is that it? It sounds great, right? I'm done, right? Unfortunately, we're getting to the biggest challenge, which is kind of ironic that we're here at Box, because the proliferation of cloud-based data, proliferation of various databases that are a niche for business units. Data in a corporation is just spread out everywhere. It can be a nightmare. Engineers communicating via Slack, salespeople living in Salesforce, and the list goes on and on. So what can be done? That's when you get the buy-in from your IT department, you work with experts, and you bridge that gap between the various platforms that you're working with, and you do something called data harmonization, and that's a complicated process, but it's also well worth it. And why is it worth it? And the solution is, the theory is that where there's data, there is a way. And you're dealing with these major issues that are keeping your GC up at night. These are, behind me are some of the real life uses that we're currently doing for our clients at Inventus. But they're also applicable for any one of you if there's something that is key to, and that's keeping you up at night. It's best to be proactive about it and monitor it from the get-go. And the theory is, I heard it kind of alluded to at the end by Stephanie's comment, is how do we get these disparate tools to talk to each other? Well, this is one way, and it's an effective way. And ultimately, the goal is to have everything at your fingertips so you can identify those outliers. So you can identify if an engineer has suddenly started loading company data to his personal Box account, for instance. So you can spot abnormal trends in stock selling before a big company event to get out in front of it, even just compliance issues. And for legal operations, it's a great way just to get a holistic view of the legal department to see how that department operates in its current state and then how it operates once you implement your tools. And that is my 5 minutes. I thank you very much.
Okay, well, we're done with the program, and so if people have questions for the panelists, I think they're all going to be around for a little bit. I think the invite said that we were here until 9, and I think that was just a little typo. So nobody feel like they've got to stay here until 9 o'clock. But thank you again to Foxworthy, and thank you very much to Joel and to Box for sponsoring us in this wonderful environment. Everyone have a safe trip wherever they're going.